I don't understand. I've given my team everything they've asked for: better pay, more flexibility, more support. Why are they still frustrated? The longer my client spoke, I noticed something. Every time he asked me a question, he would anticipate my answer and jump in with his answer before I could finish. It happened several times. Finally, I smiled and asked, "Can I make an observation?" He nodded. "You keep asking questions, but you don't wait for me to complete my answer." He leaned back in his chair for a minute, and then he smiled. "I think you've just described my team," he said. That conversation reminded me that listening isn't simply waiting for your turn to talk. Great communicators make the other person feel understood before trying to be understood themselves. And they're secure enough to let others come up with the right answer. One of the simplest ways I've found to improve your listening is an acronym that's easy to remember: E.A.R. Explore, acknowledge, and respond. So let's take E, explore. This is the mindset of a great listener. As you explore, become genuinely curious. Pay attention not only to the facts, but also the emotions that are behind the words. Listen for frustration, excitement, fear, or disappointment. Often those feelings tell you more than the actual words do. Notice your own body language. Are you leaning in an open posture, or are your arms crossed and your eyes just kind of wandering around? If you're in a networking event or a restaurant, resist the temptation to look over someone's shoulder to see who just walked in. Nothing says you don't have my attention faster than distracted eyes. If a question comes to mind, jot it down instead of interrupting. Once it's on paper, you can stop rehearsing your response and return your attention to the speaker. There's probably more to learn. And when someone says something you disagree with, fight the urge to defend yourself. Curiosity almost always produces a better conversation than certainty. Stay engaged long enough to fully understand before forming your own opinion. A is for acknowledge. Once they've finished their thought, summarize what you just heard. You might say something like, "So what I'm hearing is," or "Let me make sure I understand this." This simple habit gives the other person the opportunity to correct misunderstandings before they become conflict. And even if you do disagree, they feel heard when they can hear you at least restate their point of view. Ask open-ended questions that begin with what or how. Why is also open-ended, but be careful with that one because that can put people on the defensive. If someone says something that catches you off guard or even feels offensive, calmly ask them to repeat it. "Could you say that again?" Often simply repeating their own words causes people to rethink what they just said. They may clarify, soften their position, or realize they didn't express themselves as intended. Also, don't feel rushed. You can move back and forth between explore and acknowledge as many times as needed before offering your own thoughts. Speaking of which, R is respond. Only after you fully understand should you respond. One lesson I've learned over the years is that the strongest communicators usually use fewer words, not more. Long explanations often weaken a good point instead of strengthening it. Proverbs reminds us that when there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise. If the conversation changes directions before you've had a chance to ask a question, politely raise your hand and ask, "Hang on there, Hank. Before we move on, can I ask a question about what you just said?" People will usually be encouraged, not annoyed, when they realize you're making the effort to truly understand them. Slow down when you speak. A slower pace not only makes you easier to understand, it also gives you time to adjust your words, even in mid sentence, if you sense you're unintentionally offending someone. And if you're simply catching up with a friend, think of the conversation like playing catch. No one should hold the ball for very long before throwing it back. Of course, every now and then, you'll encounter someone who isn't interested in a conversation. They're looking for an audience. If that sounds familiar, I have a previous post about dealing with what I call the me monster. You can find it in the link in the first comment below. Every person you meet is silently asking one question: do you really care what I have to say? Your answers matter, but your willingness to listen matters even more. So the next time someone begins to speak, remember your ear. explore, acknowledge, and respond. You may discover that becoming a better listener doesn't just improve your communication, it strengthens your relationships, improves your leadership, and builds the trust every leader needs.